Sorely distressed, Switters was pacing the broken pavement outside the booking office, sweating, swearing, barely resisting the urge to kick a power pole, a trash pile, or the odd dead dog, when from inside the pyramid-shaped parrot cage that sat with his luggage, there came a voice high as a falsetto, though raspy as a pineapple. "People of the world, relax," is what it said. It was the first time the bird had spoken since leaving Seattle. 30 minutes later, in an overpriced but blessedly air-conditioned hotel room, it spoke again. The same sentence, naturally. And while there are those who may find this silly, the words lifted Switter's spirits. The flight over the Andes, the poison air of Pucallpa, the brain-boiling heat and pore-flooding humidity had combined to give him a migraine. And the headache had combined with the disappointment over the unavailability of air taxis to make him depressed. Fortunately, when Sailor squawked his signature line, Switters was instantly reminded of something Maestra had said almost 20 years before. All depression has its roots in self-pity, and all self-pity is rooted in people taking themselves too seriously. At the time, Switters had disputed her assertion. Even at 17, he was aware that depression could have chemical causes. The key word here is roots, Maestra had countered. The roots of depression. For most people, self-awareness and self-pity blossom simultaneously in early adolescence. It's about that time that we start viewing the world as something other than a whoop-de-doo playground. We start to experience personally how threatening it can be, how cruel and unjust. At the very moment when we become, for the first time, both introspective and socially conscientious, we receive the bad news that the world, by and large, doesn't give a rat's ass. Even an old tomato like me can recall how painful, scary, and disillusioning that realization was. So there's a tendency, then, to slip into rage and self-pity, which, if indulged, can fester into bouts of depression. Yeah, but Maestra, don't interrupt. Now, unless someone stronger and wiser, a friend, a parent, a novelist, filmmaker, teacher, or musician, can josh us out of it, can elevate us and show us how petty and pompous and monumentally useless it is to take ourselves so seriously, then depression can become a habit, which in turn can produce a neurological imprint. Are you with me? Gradually, our brain chemistry becomes conditioned to react to negative stimuli in a particular predictable way. One thing will go wrong, and it'll automatically switch on its blender and mix us that black cocktail, the old doomsday daiquiri, and before we know it, we're soused to the gills from the inside out. Once depression has become electrochemically integrated, it can be extremely difficult to philosophically or psychologically override it. By then it's playing by physical rules, a whole different ballgame. That's why, Switters, my dearest, every time you've shown signs of feeling sorry for yourself, I've played my blues records really loud or read to you from The Horse's Mouth. And that's why when you've exhibited the slightest tendency towards self-importance, I've reminded you that you and I, may be every bit as important as the president or the pope or the biggest primetime icon in Hollywood, but that none of us is much more than a pimple on the ass end of creation. So let's not get carried away with ourselves. Preventive medicine, boy. It's preventive medicine. But what about self-esteem? Self-esteem is for sissies. Accept that you're a pimple and try to keep a lively sense of humor about it. That way lies grace and maybe even glory. All the while that his grandmother was assuring him that he was merely a cosmic zit, she was also exhorting him never to accept the limitations that society would try to place on him. Contradictory? Not necessarily. It seemed to be her belief that one individual spirit could supersede, eclipse, and outsparkle the entire disco ball of history, but that if you magnified the pure spark of spirit through the puffy lens of ego, you risked burning a hole in your soul, or something roughly similar. In any case, Sailor Boy's squawky refrain reminded Switters of Maestra's counsel. He felt better at once, but to ensure that he'd keep things in perspective, that he wouldn't again tighten up or inflate his minor misfortunes, he opened a hidden waterproof airtight pocket in his money belt and withdrew a marijuana cigarette. Then, with a tiny special key that was disguised as the stem in his wristwatch, he unlocked the lead-lined false bottom that Langley had built into his reptilian valise and unwrapped an even more secret piece of contraband, a compilation of Broadway show tunes. After inserting the clandestine disc into his all-purpose laptop and cranking up the volume, he lay back on the bed, lit the reefer, and sang along zestfully with each and every chorus of Send in the Clowns.